I'm Elisa and I am the Scrappy Wife behind scrappywife.com, and today I have an art journaling process video for you. I did not reach my 2019 goal of finishing this art journal, but truthfully I worked in a couple of different art journals, so I think I did enough entries. They just were not all in the same journal. So I'm hoping that in 2020 I will finish this one and perhaps really make a good dent in another one. It's been a hot second since I have done some art journaling because December was so crazy with December Daily and Advent. So I'm anxious to jump back in. I don't really have a plan except to just get messy. I got some new Distress Oxide spray colors over the Christmas holiday, and so I'm looking forward to playing with those. Pulled out several different stamp sets that I'm kind of interested in using. I have a stencil over here from Dilutions, and I'm going to jump in. Like I said, I want to get messy, get colorful, and see what happens. Let's go. So it turns out that art journaling is just like any other craft. If you take some time away, you might feel a little bit clumsy coming back to it. And that's what happened with this particular project. I had fun getting messy with these Distress Oxide sprays. They're a lot of fun, but as I tried to apply things on top of it, I just kind of felt like maybe I lost my way a little bit. I just wasn't sure of the finished product. So I actually end up making 2 pages, and it's kind of interesting to see how you can start with the same base. I start with the same idea of these rainbow sprays on each page and then kind of go a little bit of a different direction with each one. So it'll be fun to see the difference between the two in the end. But you can see I'm just kind of putting my rainbow colors here in a diagonal stripe. I'll list all of the colors below. These Distress Oxide paints or sprays are so much fun to use. I love how they change up once they dry. They end up with kind of a chalky finish, which is a lot of fun to work on top of. You can see I'm kind of moving around, letting the excess liquid move across the page using my paper towel. And once I start blotting, I kind of end up liking the texture. So I grab another paper towel, go for it more, adding some more blots. And then I'm going to come back with some Dilutions Shimmer Spray. And I'm using, again, rainbow colors. And once it's dry, I really like the contrast of the chalky finish of the Distress Oxide spray versus the shimmer of those shimmer sprays, and I think it makes for a very cool base, a very cool background. One of my sprayers wasn't working, so I took it off and just kind of used the end of the sprayer tip to kind of blot some out on there, adding some green. You can see me kind of looking, deciding, okay, I'm going to add it. I do less of the shimmer spray. I don't want to cover it completely. Bringing in some blue, and then I get a little bit crazy. So I have my pink here at the bottom, and I realized, well, I never used purple. Why don't I go add purple to the upper left-hand corner? And what was I thinking? There is just a big black blob up there, and I don't know why I even started to dry it. I was like, oh my gosh, maybe if I dry it, it'll go away. It didn't go away, so I grab a paper towel. I do blot that up a little bit, and it takes off a little bit of that black look, but I was a little bit disappointed with how that turned out, but that's okay. One of the fun parts about art journaling is just working through what comes out on the page, working around it. You can see I decide, okay, if I blot it, maybe it'll come up, maybe I'll add a little bit more over here. And in the end, once it dries with the chalky finish, it's not quite as noticeable, as you can see right here. I really wanted to play with texture, so once the entire page is dry, the next thing I'm going to do is grab some texture stamps, and I think these are Dina Wakley, maybe. I'll link them below if I can find them, and I'm using Distress Oxide inks that correspond with the sprays I used. So one of the cool things about the Distress line is that all of the colors coordinate and the names coordinate. So if you have a candied apple in the spray and a candied apple in the Distress Oxide ink, they will coordinate and go together. They don't end up exactly the same. It's not like having a bunch of the same products, but I like that the different colors work together. And so I end up grabbing all the different colors, working through and adding, and you can see it's just a little hint of texture in the background. It's not a lot, and I was doing that same color on color stamping just so that would add a little bit more interest. I end up covering a lot of this up with paint, but it was fun to work on these layers and figure out how much texture I could really add with just this one stamp. The last color I come in with is this picked raspberry pink, adding it right in here in the corner, and then I'll just bring it back up to the top left for good measure. Now this is a set of Dina Wakley stamps. This is the Stars stamp, and I wanted to just add, again, just some more layers. I thought about stamping it in black, but that seemed like it would be too bold for what I wanted, so I grabbed this Hickory Smoke gray color in my Distress Oxide. You can see it's just a hint of the stars. In the end, I do wish I had kind of gone back and added a little bit more to that. Maybe a second generation black stamp or something. They end up getting lost for the most part. But again, just trying to add layers to my page. I've now decided to pull out this Dylusions Squiggle stencil. I love this stencil. It's super large. It actually works really well on the smaller journal page. And I spray it with Pixie Spray. And Pixie Spray is a special spray that you can put on the back of your stencils, and it holds the stencil in place. You get a much crisper image in the end, and I really, really love it. I use it with all my stencils now. Once you wash off your stencil, it does not leave a stickiness or residue on the stencil or on the project, and it's just really worked really well for me. Next, I am grabbing some of this Dylusions paint, and it's in white, and I have this sponge dauber that I actually got over Christmas. It was included in, I don't know, a kit that my husband got me, I think. I think it's from scrapbook.com, possibly. I'll see if I can find them, but I'm just daubing over with the white, and you can see it's a very, very thin, kind of translucent paint, so you get a lot of the color that comes through the white. And I wish in the end that I had more patience and let this dry in thin layers and gone back and added more layers, because really what I think that I was going for was a crisp white, but I wasn't feeling very patient on this particular day. And so you can see me spraying my stencil again. I just wanted to pick it up and move on. So I'm going to do the other half of the page in white. I also think it might have been cool to do one half in black and one half in white just for the contrast, but I went with all white. I had this idea of having this black and white contrast on top of the rainbow, and you'll see how I kind of go for that in a little bit. And it came across, it just wasn't exactly what was in my head when I started working on this art journal entry. So the idea would be to let that dry completely, and I let it dry some, but not completely, because again, I'm a little bit impatient, and I start stamping over the top of this, and then it gets a little bit messy. So this is a stamp set from Felicity Jane from a kit this fall. Maybe Harper, I'm not sure. I'll have to check below. I think this might be Rebecca. I'll link it below if I can find it, if it's still in their shop. I loved the florals in the stamp set, and I'm going to create 2 clusters of florals. And in my head, I did want black florals, and these do have an impact. It just was not quite the contrast that I was looking for. So I start with kind of a background of those little flowers all in a cluster, and then I'm going to grab the bigger floral centers here and add a few of them to each set. And again, I got a little excited. I stamped a little early, so you can see it's getting a little bit messy because stamping on top of wet ink is never a good idea. And I should have known that, but that's okay. Working through it, I grabbed that flower. I'm going to put that to the side and grab the one that's just a little bit smaller and add that in to fill out my clusters that I have going. And you can see the contrast starting. It just wasn't quite as stark as I was hoping for in my head, I believe. At this point on the page, I'm not quite sure what I want to do with those flowers, so I move on to another element, and this is a stamp from a Dina Wakley set called Love Rocks. Love this kind of sketchy looking lady right here, and I'll get her down right here. Again, I didn't get the best stamp impression. I wish I'd gone back, but it's stamping over top of the Dylusions paint and then over top the sprays. Some of the stamps did not come out quite as clear as I was hoping. Now the whole thing is dry, and I decided, well, I'm going to come back and add some centers to these stamps, and I thought gel pens would work, and it just wasn't really working for me. So I ended up grabbing my Le Plume markers, and that worked pretty well, adding a little bit of color. I think something else that might have been fun would have been to come back with some Nouveau crystal drops, maybe some dimensional paint right there, just to add a little bit more interest to the middle of those flowers. I just wanted to bring the rainbow in to those, so you can see me just grabbing, and I'm kind of doing just some dots in the middle to create a little bit of texture. But I think a dimensional paint might have turned out really well. So I also want to set off these flowers a little bit more. So I'm grabbing my white paint pen. It's not really working well, so I end up coming in with some white acrylic paint and a small brush, and I'm adding just kind of a highlight to each of these flowers just to bring some more contrast in that area. I'm wondering if the white highlights will kind of set off the flowers a little bit more, and they do. It does work, and so I add it here on all of the petals on the top and the bottom. But then I really don't think my flowers are set off quite enough, so I come back again with a black paint pen, and I'm going to kind of outline each of the petals in kind of a sketchy way, not being really specific about getting right on the line or anything like that. But I come back after that's dry, and you can see I'm gonna just outline each of the flowers, and this I'm happy with. This in the end worked really well, and I do like how the flowers, after I add that outline, really pop off nicely. You can see I started with a Sharpie, and then I end up coming back with a black paint pen, which is working out really well. I kind of am loving paint pens recently. Let me know if you use them in your art journaling. I think that they will bleed straight through Bible pages, which is the other main project I work on most of the time, but they are so fun for art journaling. I kind of wish I had them in all of the colors. I think that would be a lot of fun to art journal with. So let me know if you have like a favorite paint pen brand, and if you use them in your art journaling, how you use them, because they just work so well for me. I really have been enjoying them. You can see in the bottom right, I've pulled up an ephemera piece from the Adopt Shop, and I actually got this from Shauna Klingerman, who sent it to me. And it says, "Speak up for those who can't speak for themselves," Proverbs 31:8. And I'm going to add my title over here on the left-hand side, and it's going to say, "Be someone else's rainbows." And I don't know what it is about January in this new year, but rainbows have been on my heart. I've been looking at all this rainbow decor. I just want all of the color and all of the rainbows recently, and so that was kind of the jumping off point for the page, just thinking about rainbows and how it can really bring color and bring renewal into someone's life. And so I thought these two quotes went really well together, and that's almost a wrap for that page. I do decide, I think, well, maybe I'll add a little white around the edges, and then it wasn't really showing up with my white gel pen. I think I need a new Signo gel pen, and then I'm going to come over here, and that really wasn't doing what I wanted it to do, so I cover it up anyway, and make sure that that is completely dry all the way to the end, and that page will be done. As I'm drying it though, this is the point where I'm thinking I'm just not really pleased with how this page came out. I wasn't sure if I was even going to keep any of the footage. And so I decide what I'm going to do is dust it with my EK Success tool so that it won't stick on each other, because the biggest issue I had was really not letting this paint dry all the way. I think that was kind of the basis of some of my problems on this page. So I'm using my powder tool to coat it nice and well so that it won't stick. And then I'm just going to turn the page and try the whole process again. Okay, like I teased in the opening, I start with the same exact process. I'm going to come through with all of these Distress Oxide sprays, adding them in the rainbow color, and then come add in some highlights with the Shimmer Sprays. But I end up taking a different direction after I do the initial diagonal rainbow. After I get all of the initial color down on the page, you can see me adding it right here, making sure my sprays are nice and mixed up. I start to dry it, and it's really, really wet. So I take a paper towel and go over the top, and I loved the imprint that the paper towel left. I thought that was so cool, so I didn't want to mess with it anymore. I just dried it how it was, blotting up just a little bit of the excess that I have going on. But look at that cool pattern that it made. That was so fun. Now I have all the bases there. I've grabbed some Ranger. These are kind of the mica sprays. They have a little bit of shimmer to them. If you don't press it down all the way, if you just do halfway, you get these really big droplets, and that's what I kind of wanted here on the background. I really went for that droplet look, and I added kind of a coppery gold to the background. I'm pulling that same stencil up, and this time, instead of doing it on one side of the page and then the other, I've used the pixie spray, and I'm adhering it down across the page, kind of at a diagonal, and I've pulled out some black Distress Oxide. This is black soot, and I'm going to spray down black. So I went with white on the other page. This one I'm going with black. I kind of dry it a little bit, but it's beating up a lot on that plastic stencil. So you'll see me come back with a paper towel to kind of blot up some of the stuff. And again, I'm left with a very cool pattern that's left. I bring back a little bit more mica spray and I'm doing that same droplet feeling, and that is what I'm left with. So same rainbow, same squiggle stencil, kind of a different look in the background. And again, I really like the contrast of the shimmer versus the chalky finish of those Distress Oxide sprays. I think it adds a lot of interest. I was really digging the background of this page and didn't want to mess with it too much. So I am just going to use my white paint pen and I am adding my word of the year for 2020, which is dare. And my idea for 2020 is that I just want to dare to be different, dare to be kind, dare to be positive, dare to be a lot of things, and just to take the risk and dare to be myself. So I wanted to stick that word on there. It's a word that's been in my head a lot recently as I've kind of prayed over and decided what I wanted my one little word to be. And I think dare is going to be a fantastic word for me this year. I can't wait to see where it kind of takes me as my guiding post for the year. I am putting some layers of that white paint pen over the top so I can really make that stand out, making sure it's nice and dry. And then I'll add an additional layer because I really want those white words to stand out a bunch. So adding one more layer on, and then I actually will end up coming back with a black paint pen in the end to kind of highlight that word a little bit more, add some bold shadows to it to make it stand out, because that black soot Distress Oxide spray doesn't dry like jet black. It has that ashy kind of feel to it, so the black paint pen does pop off of it pretty nicely. So here you can see me adding a little bit of shadowing to Dare 2020. And then I'm going to come back again with my white paint pen. I told you I'm really into paint pens recently, and I think that I want to add some splatters. So, well, first I'm going to add my border around. I love sketchy borders around pages. It's a simple page, and this kind of brings focus into that word. So again, not trying for a super straight line, purposefully being sketchy and messy around the edges, adding in a nice border around the whole page. And then what I end up doing is doing some white splatters. And the way I do that is over to the side, you'll see me kind of just press down my paint pen, let a lot of the liquid come to the top, and then I will kind of just flick it over the whole page. So just in order to add a little bit of white splatter. Messy page. I think 2020 might end up being a messy year for me, and I'm not really sure what that's going to mean, but I'm excited to see where it takes me. Thanks for bearing with me as I jump back into art journaling. Like I said, I felt a little clumsy at first, but by the time I was through with these 2 pages, it really felt good to get back into it. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider hitting that subscribe button as well as that bell notification button. I hope you have a fabulous day and a great start to your 2020. As always, keep it creative.